This past weekend's Rivals Camp was fantastic. We're going to break it down and talk about the top prospects, 5 stars, what's going on in the SEC with Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, and more. That is next on the Portal Podcast.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet comes out a winner. Today's show is going to be a lot of talk about the top guys in the country, the 5 stars, the kids that are looking hard at the SEC, Big Ten schools around the country. But we're going to start off with some of those players from the Rivals Camp at Atlanta this last weekend. It was loaded. It's an invite camp that they just did a great job with, and I was there to check it out. And to help me break all of it down is John Garcia Jr. from Rivals.com. Mr. Garcia, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Brian. Back from Atlanta, as you mentioned. And we had Mother Nature slow us down Saturday and Sunday, but hey, the kids showed that they're competitors. They waited it out, and it ended up being a fantastic camp, especially with those skill guys that I know we'll talk about at the end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's just start with that. Were you surprised at how many kids, like we had, what was it, 2.5, 3 hour lightning delay? As soon as they started warming up, they were sending us off the field. And I went to Panera for a while just to hang out. I knew this storm wasn't going to be hanging there for very long, but long enough for me to leave. Came back, and most of the kids came back too. And I'm like, okay, this is a good sign. Gabriel Osenda was the first kid that really impressed me. You had JaReylan McCoy and him going at it in one-on-ones. So a great defensive end against Osenda. Talk about those guys and some of the other trench guys in general.
Yeah, I mean, how about 2 guys who have already played in All-American bowl games, waiting out a rainstorm, to compete against one another and against others, as well. I mean, so I think it says a lot about Osenda and McCoy, just character-wise, the competitiveness that those guys wanted to show off. And, man, we're glad. We're glad that they waited it out, because it was a heavyweight matchup in every sense, right? JaReylan goes 6'6", 260. Gabe goes 6'8", 350. I mean, go to YouTube and watch my interview with him. I'm barely in the frame. This is one of the most impressive physical specimens I've really ever covered in recruiting. It reminds me of like Evan Neal back in the day. So yeah, this was a heavyweight matchup, and both guys impressed. Both took home positional MVP honors, and it wasn't just a hey, thanks for coming MVP award. It was earned. I mean, Osenda was impenetrable, particularly on the inside, heavy-handed. When he got those paws on you, the rep was over. And I thought what he showed more of this time than the last few years that I've scouted him was this tenacity. There was an oomph at the end of every rep where he didn't want to just win. He kind of wanted to bury you and then maybe let you know that he buried you. So I just think that the light bulb has gone off here in every good way for the Tennessee commitment. He looks more trim. If you could look trim at 6'8", 350, he just looks as good as he ever has. And he moved better than maybe he ever has. Still going to be positional questions, because when you're that big, it's just a part of football. Hey, can you play right tackle? Are you going to end up inside? I think regardless, the trajectory Osenda's on is a head-turning one, and there's a reason why he's a franchise-type player at a premium position, committed in the SEC, and good for Tennessee fans. He's done. Georgia's trying. A lot of other teams are trying, but he's rock solid with the Vols. So a very good day for Tennessee fans. And then McCoy on the other side, another one who has such immense size that you sort of wonder positionally, what does it look like, right? We saw him dominate parts of the Under Armour game as an edge, as a stand-up player at 6'6", 260. And you wonder, is he fluid enough? Is he quick enough to challenge these offensive tackles without power? And some of his best reps on Sunday were him working inside, whether it was a spin move, a counter move with his hands. He looked extremely comfortable no matter what the offensive tackle presented in his stance and his kick slide. So I really like the maturity we're starting to see from JaReylan McCoy. The physicality, the flash was always there. Now you're seeing a little bit more of a consistent approach. And again, it's another heavyweight SEC type battle. He was rocking the Texas gloves. Certainly UT's got to feel good. Florida has made an impression here. He showed up with an Ole Miss shirt, former LSU commitment. So these are the programs that are going to jockey it out for JaReylan McCoy, who again took home defensive line MVP honors. So that was our start of the day, and I think it was a heck of a banner point to get going on at Rivals Camp. And those guys are names we're going to hear a lot about, not only with rankings, but when they get to the SEC and start performing on Saturdays.
I agree wholeheartedly. Those two going at it was just fun for guys like us that just enjoy football. You don't see length like that match up in high school games because, I'm sure the poor guy going against Osenda on Friday nights, I don't really need to go see that. That's not going to go well for that kid. So I'd rather see him at the Rivals Camp any day of the week. Quarterback was good. Jayce Johnson. We had just a plethora. There were 4 or 5 guys at quarterback that you guys could have picked from and said, okay, this guy's the MVP. You and I were talking about it. You're like, I don't know who I'm going to pick. Yeah. I don't know who I'm going to vote for. Talk a little bit about it. Teddy Jarrard was good. Jayce Johnson was good. But McWhorter and several other guys, how surprised were you that the quarterback spun it that well there was a long passing period too.
Yeah, I think in these camps, you see a lot of complaining, right? For reps, receivers want the ball in a certain place, and the quarterbacks aren't delivering it there. And it becomes it would have been a highlight, but the ball didn't quite get there. That was not an issue on Sunday. After the rain, the field cleared up really nicely. Sun came out, and it was crisp. On all fronts. The quarterbacks were extremely accurate when we got to the one-on-one portion of camp, and it allowed the receivers and DBs to truly shine. The cream rose to the top with those elite guys on both sides of the ball because ball placement was not an issue, whether it was down the field or even in red zone where, it's inches one way versus the other, and you see a totally different type of rep. So that was really great to see. As you mentioned, Jayce Johnson, I think is so fascinating, right? A kid who's got the frame, 6'3", over 200 pounds. He's got the look, he's a dual threat type guy on Friday nights. But again, this setting minimizes that. It's about consistency and accuracy. So if a guy like that, who's extremely coveted, is playing consistent football, it kind of pushes everyone else to sort of elevate on their own end. So he was right there. You mentioned Jarrard. I think the ball spun a little differently, from him. When he let it go, it felt like it had a little bit more, velocity right off the jump. And then you had guys who were sort of in between. Brody McWhorter going to Mississippi State. This is a phenomenal fit for Jeff Lebby, the type of player that is going to win games on Saturdays. He's not as physically impressive as Johnson or Jarrard. He's got some maneuverability, but you wouldn't necessarily consider him a run threat. But he's kind of in between. Think of the Baker Mayfield profile where not everything is elite, but everything is good enough. That's what I get with Brody McWhorter, who showed up a little bit taller than I expected based on the last time I saw him as well. He was right in contention there among the others. And then the guy who I think is in the trajectory business, the guy who is looking better and better every single time we see him is Travis Burgess. Grayson quarterback, state champion in basketball, state champion in football. We know he can run. He's massive, right? 6'4", 6'5", with the hair like 6'7". You've got all this physicality and a high floor that you expect, but you watch him throw year after year, camp after camp, and now there's a comfort that has come along with it for Burgess, and that's why his stock is rising. Auburn is right there. Still probably where I would lean if I had to pick where he is going to college, but North Carolina and Bill Belichick have come on. NC State has come on, and just the other day he told us Alabama has called, Ohio State has called. This is becoming one of those Georgia prospects, late bloomers that when you look back and say, hey, what was Georgia doing? What was Georgia Tech doing? What were these schools doing, to let this kid get out of the state? I think Burgess is that type of prospect. Would be shocked if the next time we sat down at Rivals to update the rankings, he didn't earn his 4th star, because we've seen it on Friday nights, and we're starting to see the little elements in between that make these quarterbacks franchise type players. So really excited about the trajectory of Travis Burgess. So yeah, as you mentioned, Brian, just a great camp, and the quarterback position, when it starts there, everything else kind of falls into place. I think you're muted, buddy.
There it is again. Mute button killed me again. When we come back, we're going to talk about the wide receivers. It was a ridiculous group. Some guys that could end up being NFL players, in my opinion. And when we get done with that, we're going to talk about some SEC recruiting. Georgia, Bama, and Alabama, or Florida, and all these different schools compete for the same kids. Where are they going to go? That is next here on the Portal Podcast. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. With the NBA playoffs, I've followed the Pacers for a long time. That's one of the teams that I like. Looking at that's pretty interesting within itself. But then you get into which player is going to be hot tonight. Maybe you have an idea that one guy that wasn't as hot in the last game will be, or perhaps maybe a defensive stopper that will slow down somebody from the other team. It's a lot of fun watching the NBA playoffs. And if you're really interested, you could do a same-game parlay, maybe a player with an over-under or something like that. Plus, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. John, this was a fun group of receivers, and I don't really know what the deciding factor was for y'all to say, hey, this guy was number one, because there were conservatively 3 guys that could have easily walked away with MVP. Kaiden Prothro got that award, but again, that's kind of like just picking straws out of a hat. So why'd you go with Kaiden, and what did you like about his game?
Yeah, well, first, at receiver, it was the first time I've ever asked our camp staff if there were more gold balls, which are sort of our honorable mention award. Hey, how many do we have in the truck? Because I got a lot of pass catchers that deserve, some shine. And yeah, it was that hard to try to lock things down. When it came to Prothro, it's just the consistency. He came out last year as an underclassman and won it on a rainy day, ironically enough, with Juju Lewis and some of those guys out there. And that was maybe a breakout effort for him. Well, this year he comes back with the expectations. And again, you're talking about a kid who's played in an All-American Bowl already, all the stars, all the offers. I mean, Georgia, Texas, Auburn, Florida, everything he wants is already sort of accomplished. But he's a competitor. Hey, there's a bunch of great DBs coming out here. Aaron Gregory's dad said this was the best secondary group he'd ever seen at a camp. So there was an onus of, hey, let's go prove that sort of I'm the guy. I'm still the guy here. I think he came in probably as the highest ranked wide receiver or tight end, and he wanted to exit the camp, making sure that was still the case. So I think the consistency there says a lot about Kaiden. Obviously, he's massive, right? 6'6". So you expect him to win at the short to intermediate levels and at the catch point, right? And I think we saw that on a routine basis when he broke out, the back shoulder, all that stuff was fine, 10 out of 10. But what really impressed me the most with Kaiden this time around, with those DBs in mind, because he was playing receiver. He wasn't playing tight end. He was going against corners, not linebackers and safeties. What impressed me about Kaiden was his down the field wins. He went to the third level on routine, especially as we got closer to that showcase element where it's just best on best. And he was still able to get behind defensive backs who are going to SEC and ACC schools. So to do that at 6'6", 220 pounds, I think is fascinating. We just don't see that type of physical specimen do that on a routine basis. So I think the ball tracking ability, the body control, and honestly, the route running and speed, that whole combination was just a little too much to pass up when it came to the most valuable player at that position. But like you said, Brian, this was incredibly close because Kaiden won 99% of his reps. And then you go to Aaron Gregory, 6'2", 6'3", long, lean, smooth wide receiver. Same thing. You expect him to win short to intermediate because he's a great route runner. He's got a massive catch radius that provides a true advantage. And we talked about how accurate the quarterbacks were. So he did that. We expected it, and he did it. But again, he was also going down the field and winning beautiful reps, contested reps at the catch point. So where you see a longer and leaner player, you expect finesse and maybe some speed and some polish, but the competitiveness, the ability to play physically at the catch point really stood out here. The body control, the tracking, all of those things were on 10 for the Texas A&M verbal commitment. So I thought Gregory had a really nice day and made his own claim to the MVP. And then there's just every time Brysen Wright performs, there is a question. There are multiple questions first, right? It's first of all, who is that, right? This kid comes up from Jacksonville, freshman in high school. You know, if you weren't aware of him, you certainly became aware of him very quickly. 6'2", 6'3", very filled out already, over 200 pounds. Who is this specimen, right? Oh, it's a 2028 recruit from Jacksonville. So that becomes the first question. And then the second question is he really in 2028? Is this truly a kid wrapping up his freshman year of high school? Because the things we said about Prothro and Gregory are true with him as well, despite being 2-3 years younger than these guys. He's just as physically impressive. And we talked about it with Osenda at the top of the show. Brysen will let you know about it in the middle of the route. He will let you know how confident he is. He'll win at the catch point. He'll celebrate. And what I love most about him is the confidence. You know, it's something that, you know, we talk about divas at the wide receiver position and it gets a bad connotation, but there's something good to be said for the guys who can play in the margins there, demand the football without creating a show. You know, if you could live in that margin, I think you have some ability to succeed. And I think Brysen is going to be one of those guys. You know, I went over to the 3 receivers that we're talking about with about 10 minutes left in the camp. And I said, hey, I have no idea who the MVP is. It's between the 3 of you. Neither of you has lost a glaring rep that I've witnessed with my eyes. Everyone is talking about how dominant you 3 have been. So how are we going to figure this thing out? And Brysen goes, shoot, I'll go over there and play safety and I'll cover these 2 if you need me to. I mean, that's the type of confidence, right? Kind of the Florida swagger he brought up to the state of Georgia against, 2 legitimate, SEC stars in the making, in my opinion. He said, hey, I'll just go cover him and I'll clinch the award that way. So the competitiveness, I think, for everyone was impressive in this event. The middle of spring football, it's the end of the school year. Very easy for guys with those 3, a combined probably 100 scholarship offers to say, you know what, I'm gonna sleep in on this Sunday. It's raining, I'm good. But for those guys to make the trip and stick it out with a bit of a delay and then put on that type of performance, just the reason, like you said, the reason you love football, the reason you go out and watch these guys, because special things can happen when it's organized and that competitive juice is flowing and evident, from sideline to sideline. And that's certainly, what we had on Sunday.
Absolutely. It was fantastic. So, yeah, the DBs, there were plenty of them, like Jayden Aparicio-Bailey, this kid from Oak Mountain. He's an underclassman that stood out. You pointed him out to me. There was a couple other guys. I didn't even get a chance to really dive into the DBs because there were so many good offensive players. I was trying to keep up with the quarterbacks and receivers. That was hard enough. And to say the least, the Rivals camp was above and beyond. John, when we come back, we're going to talk about the SEC. You brought that up a little bit. Who's next to trend on some of those commitments, and why hasn't there been more activity? That is next here on the Portal Podcast. So this past weekend, Auburn, Georgia, and several other schools had some pretty impressive visit lists, like really impressive lists. I told everybody on the Portal podcast, I said, early next week, you'll start seeing commitments. There were some commitments around the country. Michigan got a good tight end. BYU got a good player. ASU got a nice player. But like Georgia and Auburn, as of the time of this recording, combined 0. Shocked me. Like I didn't see that at all. Do you have any initial thought on why that is? Because we both know those staffs are really good at recruiting. Any idea on what the deal is?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. First of all, I mean, Georgia not only had an OV weekend, they had a scavenger hunt on Saturday, the scavenger hunt. If you're on social media, the Find Kirby Smart, scavenger hunt that goes down every spring. That was Saturday with the underclassmen. Teddy Jarrard got his Georgia offer. DeMonte Timms got his Georgia offer, et cetera. And then they were in the middle of an OV weekend. So star power in Athens in multiple classes. So, yeah, I was a bit surprised with their group in particular that somebody didn't walk away pledged to Kirby Smart and company. But I do think, Brian, on the official visit front, so you're talking seniors, rising senior recruits, there is it's not a fear. It feels like there is a hesitation, let's call it, with the truly elite players to come off the board. Obviously, Jackson Cantwell has done it. We just saw Jared Curtis do it earlier this month. But the guys that have multiple visits set, there's a lot at play for them relative to coming off the board with a verbal commitment. That's why the more popular window is becoming the end of June to the end of July. July 4th is a huge day. July 1st, July 5th. We've seen kids set commitment dates here over the last couple of weeks. So for a lot of them, this was the first official visit. So I think that part of it, no matter how good it goes, you say, hey, let me recenter. Let me not be on this visit high and make an emotional decision when, let's be honest, the personnel, the numbers, the scheme, so many things are different and presented differently at different programs. So if you are taking 5 official visits between mid-May and the end of June, this was your first visit weekend. So you are essentially saying no thank you to the other 4 paid for visits that are already planned by you and your camp from that program. So I think that's part of it. A lot of schools are moving towards that. If you do commit to us, you're not taking other visit policy. Like that is something that's becoming a little bit more popular. We've seen Clemson do it. Notre Dame has nudged towards it. Ohio State has begun to consider it. Tennessee with Gabriel Osenda. That's another one. Hey, if you are committed, we're asking you please not to take these other trips. So even if you're close, and a couple kids told us they were very, very close, you don't pull the trigger quite yet because there's still so much ahead, and you don't want to potentially limit yourself relative to those other programs. And frankly, the NIL, the money, the packages involved with those programs, because doing a little off the record research over the weekend in particular, Brian, we're asking the difference between official visits and unofficial visits with elite recruits. And I won't reveal his name, but he said, look, the difference is I've gone on 4 unofficial visits and 1 official. On the official, we can sit down and talk numbers. We can sit down and learn about your role in the scheme and your role in your pocketbook. It sounds sleazy. It sounds unethical to a degree, but that's a part of the packages that these programs are selling. And that is now beginning to go down on official visits. Before that, a top 100 recruit with all the offers in the world had taken like 7, 8 unofficials already this year. He's already made multiple commitments. And his mentor told me he's been presented numbers 1 time. And it was during the 1 official visit that he took. He's now committed to that program. So the official visit is becoming the negotiation ground, or at least the conversation ground with NIL. So until you get through the bulk of your schedule, a lot of kids and the camp around them, which again now involves agents, representation. I mean, heck, Drew Rosenhaus represents Jackson Cantwell. Drew Rosenhaus, the guy's doing, $100 million deals in the NFL, is representing a 17-year-old offensive lineman. So these people are in volume becoming more involved with all of these elite recruits. So even the elite programs with great star power on their visit lists aren't walking away with 5-6 commitments like we're used to seeing, because the thought is, hey, let's regather, recenter, and see what the next few weeks look like. And, for better or worse, the bulk of these programs are hosting kids every single weekend once we get past this Memorial Day weekend. So May 30th to June 24th, it is prospect official visit city. The numbers will change. The situations will change relative to their options. And you'll see a lot more commitments at the end of June versus the end of May, even though kids are on the road all the same.
So do you think schools, like, again, I'm just going to use the same two as I mentioned a minute ago, Auburn and Georgia, was it okay to have the early visit? Do you think that's advantageous? Or do you think it'd be better to backload it now? Like, there's always that discussion every year, but NIL is the new part of the equation. What's your take there?
Yeah, I used to always be on one extreme or the other. You want the first visit or the last visit, right? You want to set the tone, or you want to have that last impression, because look, these are teenagers, right? I think that was the classic thinking with the official visit run that we're going to see. Now I'm kind of in the middle, and I know it's not sexy to talk about, but I think there's a reason to be at the beginning of the list, and there's a reason to be towards the end. So I think the safer bet is in the middle. That those first 2 weeks of June in particular, I do think you could see a lot of action, because at least now for the bulk of prospects, you've seen 2 or 3 different examples of packages, what you're going to be doing in that scheme, your living quarters, the whole deal. You'll have 2 or 3 examples as opposed to one. I do know there are programs, though, that are trying to be that last visit. I think Nebraska is one of them, particularly with some great talent in Florida like Devin Jackson, Danny Odom. They want to be the last official visit because they want to have that final impression. But there is also a sense of, hey, you might not get that visit, because if 2, 3, 4 officials are already in the books and the numbers are looking really good and everyone's feeling pretty comfortable or fatigued to a degree from eating so many great steaks and flying and all those things that to us sound amazing, sign us up right now, that could be a danger on the back end in this day and age relative to before. So it's probably somewhere in the middle where you want to be ideally. But the other issue is every program scheduling these visits every weekend. So you also kind of got to get in where you fit in, and you can't try to move too many dates around. I've heard, again, just in the last few days, Clemson lose official visits because of this. Miami has lost official visits because of this. Michigan is losing official visits because of this, where they want to move kids around, but the kids got every weekend already booked. So now you're going to ask to either extend that official visit window with a prospect, potentially take it into the fall, which who knows at that point, once the season gets going, all bets are off with commitments and visits, etc. Or you're going to ask a prospect to say, hey, fly on a Friday, fly back on a Sunday, and then on a Monday, come to our campus for a midweek visit, even though your schedule is already swamped. So those are the ones that are more likely to get canceled and or not mean as much, because you're right on the heels of another trip. So there's a little bit of a push and pull with the programs and the prospects, because there are only so many weekends, even though all these trips are on the school's dime, all these flights, hotels, meals, etc., are on the school's dime. So it's kind of a bit of luck, as you mentioned. You got to get lucky to a degree as well, based on the other schools and the other visits that Prospect X has penciled in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a really fine-tuned list, because if you try to get it on a kid late and you're his 3rd or 4th visit, you get what's left. That's why evaluating early, being towards the forefront of a young man's recruitment, is pivotal. If you don't get to pick anything, and you could get the visit weekend that you guys aren't even hosting, and then you're just out to lunch. So that certainly happens all the time. One last question for you, John. When do you think the barrage, for lack of a better word, will take place? I'm going to guess the June 15th, 17th range is the beginning of it. Am I far off, or do you have a different idea?
No, I'm right there with you because the official visits wrap up, I believe, that weekend of the 22nd and 23rd. So I think the weekend prior would be when we start to see a big run, or you get the kids who are going to hold off no matter what and try to get it into July, closer to Independence Day, closer to those dead period weeks where there can't be any visits, right? So you have to sit back and chill and then maybe make a call because you do want to come off the board and honestly claim a spot before your senior season begins for the majority of these prospects. So I agree with you. I think the mid-June window, that weekend of the 13th, I think is going to be crucial for recruiting. I think you see some kids frankly they're over it at that point. They want to come off the board and they probably pop before they jump on the flight back home, or you get it over to that first week of July when it's the dead period. All the events are done: Elite 11, Rivals 5-star, OT7, Future 50. There's so many events that are at the end of June as well that also impact recruiting. I think that slows it down just a little bit and pushes you more towards that first week of July. But, July 4th, I think, is becoming a really massive commitment window. And, if prospect A sees prospect B doing it and he's got the fireworks in the background, it's something that other prospects will try to jump on as well. So mid-June or that first week of July, I think we're going to be pretty busy talking about who went where. And this top 10 we see in the team recruiting rankings will start to shake up a little bit.
I agree with all of that, to be honest with you. I think be a little later push. So that's okay. It's just a whole bunch of work for you and me for about 3 weeks straight. Every day will be an adventure. John, tell everybody where they can find your work.
Yes, sir. Rivals.com. We're still recapping a lot of what went down in Atlanta and, of course, gearing up for these huge official visit weekends. Rivals.com.
Absolutely. You can find the Portal Podcast wherever you get your pods and on YouTube. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. It surely helps the algorithm. We will see you again soon on the Portal Podcast.